Hello, everyone. Today's topic is Fools Get Revenge, Strong People Forgive, and Wise People Ignore What Buddhism Teaches. If someone is hostile and malicious towards you and actively causing you harm, how should you deal with that person? Buddhism teaches of three ways in which one might respond to hostile people like this: vengeance, forgiveness, or indifference. Let us go over each one and explore what the best course of action could be. Today we will cover 1. Why vengeance is foolish. 2. Distancing yourself from the condition. 3. Putting trivial matters aside. You've probably heard of the biblical saying, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. It essentially means that if someone hurts you, you should hurt them back in the same way that they hurt you. Buddhism, however, teaches that this kind of retaliation is foolish. Why so? That is because it is based on the notion that others' causes produce one's own effects. In other words, it presumes that the cause of the bad results that people receive is the actions of other people. Buddhism calls this ignorance since it shows we are ignorant of how cause and effect really works. This ignorance commonly manifests as jealousy, envy, and resentment. We resent people when they cause us pain, and we envy them when we can't understand why they should have things better than us. Buddhism teaches that this is foolish, as it means we are not applying wisdom to the situation. The truth, says Buddhism, is that it is our own causes that produce our own effects. In other words, it is the deeds we do that cause everything that happens to us, whether good or bad. This law of cause and effect forms the very foundation of the Buddhist teachings. If we are ignorant of this truth, we will blame and despise others for any bad effects that we receive, possibly lash out at them, and suffer as a result of these bad deeds. This is indeed foolish. Buddhism compares this mindset to a thief that blames the ropes. Imagine this: a thief has been caught and tied up with rope, and he shouts in anger, "It's because of this rope that I am suffering." He appears to have no awareness that if he himself had not stolen from other people in the first place, he would not have ended up being tied up. His suffering stems entirely from his own actions. He is simply too foolish to see it. We might laugh at this thief, but we too have a habit of turning a blind eye to our own deeds and putting the blame on people and things outside of ourselves when things go wrong for us. If we really took an honest look at the situation, however, we would see, in any case, that what led us to this point was indeed our own actions. Let's say, for instance, that you're fed up with your husband. He's annoying and irresponsible, and you've grown to despise him for being a constant nuisance. Now, obviously, he is responsible for his own behavior and should make more effort to be a good husband. However, take note that he is not anyone else's annoying husband. He is only yours. Why is that? Because you're the one who chose to marry him. If you had decided against marrying him, he would not be annoying you right now. Your situation is the result of your own choices. Now, you might be thinking, hang on, aren't you blaming the victim here? If you think logically about the situation, however, it should be quite clear that this is indeed a case of own cause, own effect. Even so, we are naturally inclined to reject this notion and therefore default to placing the blame outside of ourselves, just like the thief blaming the rope. We might then even plot to get back at the person whom we are blaming by putting them through the same kind of suffering that we're going through. As satisfying as we think that might be, however, this kind of behavior will only bring more suffering upon us. Not only does dwelling on such thoughts cultivate negativity within us, if we act on our thoughts, the other person might then seek revenge on us for our own act of revenge. Vengeance begets vengeance, and just creates a never-ending vicious cycle. One Japanese poem puts it like this: "Why won't you stop? The result of grudges and curses. 2 pits. In other words, if you don't stop yourself from resenting someone and seeking vengeance against them, you will both end up dead and buried, and no one will be happy in the end. And here's why Buddhism teaches that vengeance is foolish. It creates a vicious cycle and ultimately ruins everything for everyone. Next, let us explore why Buddhism teaches that strong people forgive and wise people ignore instead of seeking vengeance. In the Dhammapada, Sakyamuni Buddha taught the following: hatred is, indeed, never appeased by hatred in this world. It is appeased only by loving kindness. This is an ancient law. If you respond to another person's grudge with a grudge of your own, you will never find peace. You'll stay irritated and on edge for no good reason. If instead you act with kindness, patience, and self-restraint, that will put an end to such hostilities. To refuse to return hatred with hatred, even when someone is cruel to you, is to practice forbearance, and one who is able to do this is strong indeed. It is a marvelous virtue, but not an easy one to carry out. Through the practice of forbearance, you forgive the person, converse with them to try to understand where they are coming from, and if they continue to do bad deeds, you guide them onto a more positive path. There is a poem that goes, "Do not think one who is losing to be weak, for it is in forbearance that they are strong. It actually takes more strength to be able to pull back a little than it does to keep trying to fight your way to victory. Pick your battles." Only a strong person can practice forbearance and stand down, and only a strong person can practice compassion and forgive the other person. Still, if that seems a bit too tall an ask, there is another thing you can try: the way of the wise person, ignoring the other person's hostility. There is power in distancing oneself from negative conditions. After all, the conditions we come into contact with can have a major impact on our well-being. To avoid unnecessary frustration and suffering, then, if someone is being hostile towards you, it is best to distance yourself from them. Indeed, Master Shinran taught, maintain a respectful distance from negative conditions and do not go near them. In other words, quietly slip away from the hostile person without saying anything that would further agitate them, and avoid approaching them. Seeking revenge requires you to go against this advice and approach the person, which will only make things worse. Keep them far away and be at peace. Regularly putting this advice into practice will help you live much more happily and healthily. Although Buddhism teaches that it is the seeds we sow that produce our own results, no seed will grow well if the field is bad. A seed needs good, soft, fertile land to be able to bear good fruit. In much the same way, bad conditions will have a negative influence on the kind of results we can obtain through our own deeds. If we find ourselves dealing with a bad field, then rather than just gritting our teeth and carrying on with things as they are, we need to make the effort to change things if we are to reap a decent crop. Either we should cultivate the field ourselves, or we should relocate entirely to a field that is already good. In other words, when confronted with a bad situation, we need to either fix things or find a better situation if we want to gain good results. We can start by identifying negative conditions and staying away from them as much as possible. That way we can really focus on doing good deeds and so create ourselves a happier future. The time we have in life is limited, as is our energy. To live is in itself to gradually use both of these things up. With the sand in our hourglass waning with every passing second, we need to carefully consider this: what we are spending our limited time and energy on. If we're spending it on negative people, that surely is a total waste. Here's an exercise for you. Name the first 5 people who immediately spring to your mind. Those 5 people are having a big influence on your life, and you must have spent a fair bit of time and energy on them, whether you realize it or not. If any of them is the person or people you hate the most, then that's not a good sign. It would be far better to direct our time and energy towards the people we love. Think about it. If you're constantly thinking about how angry you are with someone, dwelling on what you hope will happen to them as attribution for things they've done, and obsessing over what they're posting on social media, do you think that will leave you feeling happy and well? Of course not. All that anger and hatred is just going to be a drain on you and will only leave you feeling terrible. It's a real waste of your time and energy. Whether the striker or the stricken, both are alike, merely engaged in play, as ephemeral as a dream. This poem was composed by the renowned 14th century Japanese Zen monk Muso Kokushi during an incident that took place when he and a group of his disciples were about to cross the Tenru River. Boat rides across the river had been suspended for some days due to swollen waters, and once they started up again, a great many people lined up at the pier in hopes of getting aboard. When Muso Kokushi and his disciples finally got their chance to board, one rambunctious samurai pushed past everyone else and stomped his way onto the boat. "Sir, please," said Muso Kokushi, "don't barge in. Everyone else here is waiting their turn." At this, the samurai angrily spat, "You think you can preach to me just 'cause you're a monk," and struck Kokushi on the forehead with an iron fan. Seeing blood trickling down their master's face, Kokushi's disciples were enraged. It just so happened that these monks were former samurai themselves, and they were quite ready and able to throw this samurai into the river. When they stood up ready to fight, the samurai growled, "Bring it on!" and pulled out his sword. With things now about to escalate into a bloodbath, Muso Kokushi loudly thundered out this verse: "Whether the striker or the stricken, both are alike merely engaged in play, as ephemeral as a dream." The striker was, of course, the samurai, with the stricken being Muso Kokushi himself. Either way, this whole situation was but a trivial, fleeting little game. Everyone might be filled with murderous rage right now, but in 10 years' time, they'd probably look back on the situation and think, with little emotion or perhaps even amusement, "Oh yes, I remember that." To lose one's life over something that mattered so little in the long run would be a needless waste indeed. If, say, the one you love dumps you, do you really think that's worth then stalking that person and committing murder-suicide over? Maybe it hurts like crazy right now, but some years down the line, you might well have found someone else you like, married them, and even feel glad the breakup happened. If you kill that person and or yourself now, you'll destroy any chance of that ever happening, and for what? The present situation is but a fleeting game. Don't throw your life away over it. Whether you win or whether you lose, in the grand scheme of things, it's not actually that big a deal, even if it feels like it is right now. A loss in the present might even turn out to be a useful experience sometime later. Committing a murder or suicide over it is a waste of precious life, and sitting around wallowing in hatred and resentment is a waste of precious time. So next time you're tempted to do something rash or spend time and energy stewing in negative emotions, just ask yourself, is it really worth it? Today, we learned about 3 ways to deal with hostile people: the fool's way of vengeance, the strong person's way of forgiveness, and the wise person's way of distancing oneself from the condition. At the very least, let us all try our best to avoid taking the fool's way. Thank you for watching.